City Matters.
Hello and welcome to another installment of Education in Motion here on HMTV. My name is Zachary Graulich and I am the Assistant Director of Education here at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County. And today I am joined by Dr. Janet Brill. Dr. Brill is a best-selling author of health and wellness books who made a profound pivot from wellness to witness. Her latest book, Little Edna's War, tells the astonishing true story of her mother-in-law, Edna's survival through the Warsaw Ghetto, life on the Aryan side under a false Catholic identity, and service in the Polish Home Army, all before the age of 10. Drawing on over 5 hours of testimony recorded by the USC Shoah Foundation, Janet wrote the memoir in Edna's own voice to ensure her extraordinary story would never be lost. Please welcome Dr. Janet Brill. Janet, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Zach, for having me.
Absolutely.
Pleasure.
So I'd love to start with you yourself. Could you share with me and all of our listeners a little bit about your own personal background and how you found your way into this world of Holocaust education?
Well, it didn't start out as Holocaust education. I started out as I got my doctorate in exercise science, health, and wellness, and became a writer and wrote 4 books about health and wellness. And I'm from New York City, so I never really knew much about the Holocaust. My parents both fought in World War II, so I knew that Hitler was evil and 6 million Jews were killed. But I didn't know much more, to be perfectly frank. Yeah. And until I married into the Brill family 42 years ago. And that's when my life changed.
Wow. So you married into the family. Mm-hmm. You met Edna, your mother-in-law. Mm-hmm. Share a little bit about Edna's story for those who may not know anything about your book yet and might be interested in knowing a bit more than what I gave in the introduction. How did Edna survive?
Oh, gosh. Well, first, let me just say that the Edna that I knew, when I first met her, I was young and married her son, and she was just, I knew she was a Holocaust survivor, she and her husband, Harry, but I didn't know much more. And I got involved with having children and being married, and so she was just a warm, wonderful, incredibly generous mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And as time went on, we didn't talk much about it. My husband didn't talk much about it until, I guess, and I had known that she had presented her story at Lehigh University. She had spoken at high schools, but it wasn't until she spoke at my kids' high school for Holocaust Remembrance Day, where I attended, which was many years later, that I just sat there and shocked, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea, because she was grandma.
Yeah.
She was just loving and I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing with my ears. So, and what I was hearing was that this was not grandma. This was a little girl, a beautiful little blonde girl who was born in the wrong place, the wrong time in history, in Warsaw in 1934. And she was at her best friend's birthday party when September 1st, 1939, when the bombs rained down. And she and her wonderful sister, Miriam, were basically stranded in the midst of war-torn Warsaw, and they had to make their way home. And then they proceeded to live. Their home was actually Mila 18, which, for those who don't know, was the ZOB headquarters. Thank you. During the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. Yeah. So it's a very well-known
Absolutely,
address.
very significant.
Very significant. I mean, Edna's life
is
a history book. And so, anyway, so then so their home was actually within the confines of the ghetto wall. And so when she was 7, she became a smuggler. So she went through holes in the ghetto wall to perform, she and her sister, to get money and also to bring and sneak food back through the wall to feed their family because their family was starving. So that was her first act of resistance at age 7. Yeah. Then a year later or so, they couldn't survive on the ghetto side. So the mother, Shulamit, her mom, actually sent the 2 daughters over to the Aryan side to be taken care of. Unfortunately, the person that she gave all her money to, the mother, they turned the girls in to the Gestapo, but they escaped. And because they were very street smart and very cunning, and so then they performed, they became Polish Catholic orphans, so they changed their persona, and that's how they survived. And then Edna now is 9 years old, and she joins the Polish Home Army as a courier and fights, armed at 9, fights Nazis as a Polish Catholic. That's incredible. And is actually hit by shrapnel from a grenade, so she's wounded, but she survives. She survives the Wola massacre. She ends up getting awarded a Medal of Valor when she turned 10 on her 10th birthday, October 2nd. She's awarded a Medal of Valor and an award for being wounded. And then she gets transported to 2 Nazi POW camps. Now she's 10 years old. Wow. So she's living in POW camps. And she ends up, the second camp was Oberlangen, which is very famous because it was all women. It's the first all-women POW camp. And so she survives Oberlangen, and then after that goes to DP camps, and then actually is given, now she's Polish Catholic at this point, inside and out. And she's given an audience with Pope Pius XII at 12 years old, as a Polish Catholic war hero. And Pope Pius XII gives her an award for being a Polish Catholic hero at 12, never knowing that she's Jewish. Yeah. So that's basically just the beginning of the story.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So, that is incredible. And I love how you set all of that up. Just speaking about her as a person, as grandma, as you said, because it's so important for us to remember and acknowledge that these survivors should not be defined by the fact that they are survivors. They were people, they were mothers, they were daughters, they were sisters, they were grandmothers. And it's so fascinating that you, for a while, as you said, really didn't know anything about her experiences. Was that, I know you said that she spoke publicly a little bit. Was it that she didn't really at home share her experiences, or that you just didn't really think to ask before you first heard her experiences in the school?
I do think both. She wasn't vocal at home, and which is sad. But back to your point about how important it is, as I say, I was born and raised in New York City, and I learned a little bit about the history, 6 million people, and that was a number. But it wasn't until it became personal for me that it struck me. And, she was someone that I loved and adored, who was so good to me. And then when I realized her story, I put a face to the history. And if we do that, and if we help others to do that, people remember faces. They don't remember statistics.
Absolutely. And that is the power of survivor, second generation survivor, third generation survivor, and so on, testimonials, because it makes it personal. Because to your point, people don't remember statistics. We're talking students and adults. No one remembers dates and facts. You you can't just barrage people with information. You have to share the experience and make it personal, because if they hear from a survivor or a child of a survivor or a family member of a survivor, it makes it so much more real to them, because then they can leave that program, that museum experience, wherever it is that they're having this experience, and they feel like they met someone, even if it is by proxy. So in your case, sharing Edna's story, and she's not physically there to share it, but they feel like they know Edna once they read the book or they hear from you. And that's what's so important.
And also, you always hear the term bear witness.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
And what it means is to hear the story and put a face to this story and continue, even once that person passes away, to continue to tell the story, because it's the truth.
Yeah.
And it's what happened. And if we don't teach our younger generations the human capacity for evil, and if we don't teach them what the root cause of the Holocaust was, which was indifference, meaning that people just did not speak up against hate, then how are they ever going to be able, or how are we ever going to prevent genocide?
Exactly. Absolutely. So take me through the next step. So you have this aha moment where you hear her testimony in full for the first time. Where do you go from there? Is it right away that you decide, I've got to do something, I've got to help share this story more broadly? Or did that still come months or years later?
When they were both still alive, I did decide to share their stories at a Holocaust conference. So I did a PowerPoint about their extraordinary stories when they were alive. But as Edna aged, she had spoken and she was okay about speaking, but as she got older, she wasn't okay with it, because she was getting ill, and and I think that the trauma started to encroach more. Plus her sister Miriam, who really was her protector, and actually her mother, because her mother had been murdered. Miriam sadly committed suicide in the 70s in Tel Aviv. And so I think losing Miriam really changed Edna, and she was not able to talk, and she didn't want to talk about it anymore. And she shouldn't have. I didn't want to force that.
Of course.
So when she died, it's not a torch that I asked to bear. I just felt, this is my purpose. To carry her story, because she was such an incredibly courageous human being, and made history in so many ways. And I'm so grateful for her, because without her and without surviving, I wouldn't have my husband, I wouldn't have my children, nor my grandchildren.
Absolutely. And I think, you mentioned this concept that you didn't choose to do this. You felt that this was kind of a calling, that you had to do this. It was so important. And I feel that is how so many family members of survivors feel, that it's an obligation. It's not a choice.
Right.
It's something that you have to do to make sure that not only that individual testimony is shared, but that the world understands and that the world learns. Because if second generation and third generation and family members are not going to stand up and they're not going to share the experiences, then who will? Because as we know, the vast majority of people in the world don't have any family connection to the Holocaust, so it's not personal to them. So if those who it is personal for don't stand up, then who will? So I really appreciate your point that you felt this calling to do this, and that's why you're here today. So share with me, what was the journey like to write the book? How long did it take you to write? What has that journey been like for you, especially since publication?
Well, I mean, I did what I know how to do. I'm a writer. I'm a researcher. And so I decided, first of all, if I didn't do it, who would? Nobody.
Yeah.
My husband couldn't. He couldn't. It's way too painful for him. There's no way.
Yeah.
And so I spent years sitting down. You know, we videoed for the kids her story. She told it, you know, very sanitized, many times to the kids. And I went and I sat, which was intense, and watched the 5 hours of her Shoah tape, taking notes. And I did a massive amount of research. Her brother, Yaakov, he was another one for the history books. He started Lohame Hageteo, the ghetto fighters, kibbutz and museum. He started that. And he also had a testimony. So at the time, there wasn't AI, and I had it was in Hebrew. So I had his testimony translated because he had passed on as well. And so it was a labor of love, but incredibly, overwhelmingly difficult in two ways. One, because I wanted to write it from Edna's point of view, from a child's point of view, so people would understand and walk in her shoes. But for me to do that, I had to walk in her shoes. And to do that with someone that you love so much, and to really experience, not really, but to see what the atrocities and what she witnessed and what she went through, and her extraordinary, superhuman courage. I mean, that was, that practically did me. And then the second part of writing it that was incredibly hard for me was just the concept of how evil human beings can be and the cruelty that they can inflict. And I guess going over in my mind, like, how does a civilized society do this? And I don't know that anybody can answer that question.
So, as you said, you had to put yourself really in Edna's shoes. How did this journey for you change the way that you viewed your mother-in-law? You know, you obviously knew her for years and you saw her how you saw her, but after she passed, you had this entirely different experience learning what she lived through. Did that change the way that you view her now when you reflect on your memories of her and your time together? Has that changed?
Yes, because that I think when I say that she was courageous, probably one of the most courageous women in history, it's not just the courage that she showed during the war. I think that the definition of strength and courage is what she did after the war. And she created a magnificent life and loved life. And she created a beautiful family and was happy. She would light up the room. She would sing and dance. And she dressed, she was glamorous. She was kind. She was generous. She just was spectacular. And I think that is courage.
Absolutely. That's survival. That's resilience. That's resistance.
That's resistance.
Absolutely.
All the way through her 84 years.
Absolutely. And in speaking about the life that she built and the family, of course, you have your husband, your kids, your family.
And my grandkids, who were both named after, one is named after Edna and one is named after Harry.
Oh, incredible. So how does your family feel about this journey that you've been on, that they've watched closely as you've gone through, spent so much time researching and watching and translating and making sure that everything's perfect for this publication? How do they feel about all of this work that you're doing?
They're thrilled because they loved Grandma more. They adored Grandma.
Yeah.
So they are just absolutely thrilled that I'm telling her story now for the world.
Yeah.
Because she deserves it. And so I think that that they are just, really happy about that. And then my husband, he always is by my side when I speak. And sometimes I glance over and I look at him, and honestly, I wrote this book for him because I love him and I love his mother and his father. So I think very supportive and very, very thankful that I did this.
And not only have you written it for the world, but you also, as you said, you wrote it for them. You've given them this gift because, as you said, you felt that if you didn't do this, who was going to? And there's certainly a possibility that if you didn't do it, maybe nobody in the family would. The next generation or the generation follow. It gets, the more that time passes. Exactly.
And honestly, when she died, I was like, there is just no way that I'm going to let her story and her life die with her. Just not happening.
Absolutely. And that's why we're here. So is anyone else in your family in any way involved in Holocaust education? Maybe not to the extent that you are, but have they been involved in maybe any initiatives or programs that have to do with Holocaust education?
My middle daughter, Mia, who's named after Miriam, which is Edna's sister, she's involved with the New York 3G, I believe it is.
3GNY.
Yes, 3GNY. And so actually we were just talking that perhaps she might interview me, which would be very interesting.
Absolutely.
Because a granddaughter, interviewing me about grandma.
Yeah. So I guess it's safe to say that the family, the next generation, they feel this responsibility as well to eventually maybe someday carry the torch forward. You're, of course, doing this incredible work by speaking publicly and sharing and writing. And when the time comes, we, of course, hope that the next generation will do the same. So do you have that confidence in the next generation of your family?
100%. Yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. Because, not every family is so fortunate to have either generations to come, or not everybody can. As you mentioned, for your husband, it's very difficult for him as a second generation survivor to speak about it. And for many families, that is the way that it is. And there's just nobody who's able or comfortable to speak, or they maybe just don't have the information to speak. A lot of survivors couldn't speak about their experiences. And when they passed away, what they lived through kind of went with them. So it's incredible for me to hear from you personally that you and your family are blessed to have the information, have the testimonials, have the video recordings, and that that the next generation is going to share that forward. And I want to know, in your words, what does that feel like for you to know that the next generation is going to carry that forward? That must be such a source of pride for you.
Absolutely. But I want to say that I feel blessed. I feel blessed that, first of all, that I knew that I married into this family, and that I knew Edna for 37 years. I am beyond grateful. And so I hope that my children see that, and I think that they do. And of course, they're going to carry this on because that's who they are, and they see me doing it.
Yes.
But again, it's about gratitude to the greatest generation. And I thank Edna, and this is my thank you to her, because I would not live this life that I've lived if it were not for her and her husband and my parents fighting in World War II. So it's this deep sense of gratitude.
Yeah. And it shines through. It shines through in the book. I myself am about halfway through it, and I feel it. I feel it in every page, that there's just so much care and thought and love in every word that's written. The way that you took this extraordinary experience and presented it in the way that it's really through the eyes of a child, as you said, which is so significant, because I think that for children during the Holocaust, the experience was so profoundly different than for adults who understood the world, and they understood what was happening around them. You mentioned in the book, of course, Edna's parents. They have this awareness that Edna at times picks up on, that she doesn't really understand why something is happening, but she knows it's not good. And she looks to her parents for comfort, or an explanation. And they sometimes don't want to give her that explanation, or they don't know how. But it's clear that they know what's going on. They know the reality. Yes. And that's what's so complicated about survival during the Holocaust for these children. And so the way that you had that showcased throughout the book, just from listening and understanding and knowing her. And I think that's where it comes from, is that you knew her for almost 4 decades, and it shows. And so if I can pick up on that and the love that you have for her, I'm sure that your kids and your grandkids feel that same love radiating throughout your household, throughout your family. It's unmistakable, truly, I have to say. So I'm a very big fan of the book, of the publication, and the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
So as we wrap up here, I'd love for you to share with our listeners if there's any message that you have for them, whether it be just about Holocaust education in general, the importance of bearing witness, anything that you feel you'd like to share with our listeners.
I think we have to learn from their stories that we need to call out hate. Mm-hmm. We cannot be indifferent. And that, I think, is probably the most important point, as well as to keep these stories alive so that future generations can learn. Because as I said before, if you don't understand the capacity of human behavior, then how are you going to prevent it in the future?
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. You have to understand what hate can truly look like, mm-hmm. and what hate can truly do, mm-hmm. in order to understand and feel a calling to stop it. Because why should anyone care about hate or intolerance if it doesn't really go anywhere? It doesn't really matter. But right. When you study the Holocaust, exactly, when you study the Holocaust, you see what hate can do. And it should scare all of us.
It's very scary, especially now. In these
exactly.
Times.
We see
very scary.
We see worldwide, mm-hmm. hate of all kinds, especially anti-Semitism, are on the rise. Mm-hmm. And we can only imagine what many of these Holocaust survivors who are no longer with us would be thinking, and how they'd be feeling if they were still with us today and seeing this massive rise in anti-Semitism. So I'd love to end with, if Edna were here, what is something that you feel she would be wanting to say, either to our listeners or just about the world today? How do you think she'd be responding?
Well, I think first off, she would grab the mic and belt out a song. And then she would say to speak up against hate, no matter what your age is. And she would probably say, there's a saying that Jews went like sheep to the slaughter. And she would say, I didn't. I took a pistol and shot Nazis at 9. And if she can do it, all of us can do it and fight evil. And then she'd also probably say, thank you, Janet. And then with her thick Polish accent, she'd say, Sami, I told you to marry her.
Janet, thank you so much for being here today. This is incredible. For all of our listeners, where can they get a copy of Little Edna's War?
Wherever books are sold, or you can go to the website, littleednaswar.com.
Great. Thank you so much again, Janet, for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure to host you today.
Thank you, Zach. My pleasure.
And to all of our listeners, thank you so much as always for tuning in. Again, this is Education in Motion on HMTV at HMTC. For more information on our other series and our other podcasts, please look us up at hmtcli.org.